The title of the oral history project is Heart Transplant. This is Jude Washock, and I am interviewing D. Washock. Hey, this is Jude. This is the second part of the recording. I'm interviewing my Aunt Debbie. I'm gonna start off now. How old were you in comparison to Don Washock when he was in need of a heart transplant?
How old was I? Oh my. I would say probably about 25.
I was 14 when Don had his transplant. Don was 24, or almost 24. He was 23.
Thought that he had the flu in the beginning.
His heart was enlarged. Cause unknown at that time. Just that he was very sick. And he was put on the heart transplant list shortly thereafter.
In Hudson Valley College, he had a really neat group of friends. He was good friends with Joe Boyle and National Guards, and I'm not sure, there was a couple other friends that he was involved in. He was, and that's when he, I believe, got sick, was after he was away with National Guard.
Wasn't organ donation considered very new during the time of Mr. Washock's diagnosis?
Oh, without a doubt. Even regular, like, bypass surgeries on a heart were still fairly new at that point in time.
And they said he has a very bad heart. It's not functioning properly, and it's affecting his kidneys, and he's going to have a transplant soon.
Don, when he got his, I believe they had just started doing them in the mid to late 70s, if I'm not mistaken, here in the States at least. He was, I believe it was the second longest living heart transplant recipient in the United States. And I also remember you got to meet Governor Pataki because of your father and his transplant.
How much support did he receive after being diagnosed with a heart transplant?
Fundraisers were done. He was a student at Hudson Valley just prior to him getting sick, and they all jumped right in and did a couple of fundraisers there as well to donate money towards his medical expenses and things like that. We had my father was involved in politics, so there were a couple of politicians that actually went door to door in South Troy collecting money in little jugs, because I remember that as well. And Tom Abbott was one of the guys that I remember doing that. They had a big fundraiser at the Polish Club where I believe it was 5 or 6 different bands donate their time, food, raffles.
I do remember, I think it was at the Polish American Club, and I believe all of the cousins and family came together. A lot of people came to it. A lot of people donated their time, donated money and raffles, and I believe a band was there. I have no idea how much they raised, though I'm not really sure. Hudson Valley, where he was going to college at the time, was very much involved, too, with it.
We were very fortunate, very, very fortunate. And people still talk about him. Every now and then I'll run into somebody that I've never met before, and when they find out my maiden name, they're like, wow, is Don your brother? And I remember when, so he still has, our family still has a lot of support and rallying behind us because of him.
Family and friends, yes. It did make a lot of people aware to understand about that, and yeah, it was pretty important.
Mom always tried to keep things as normal as possible. Tried to keep all of us, still doing everything that we did. Not that she sheltered us, but just, Don wouldn't have wanted it any other way. Don didn't want anybody feeling bad for him. It was, continue on as you would type of deal. So he actually became ill in, I believe it was 1981 when he was in the National Guard.
What would he say to you guys a lot of the time when he was in the hospital?
Not to worry about me. I'll be okay. Because he didn't want us to worry.
Again, he was being treated by our family physician as
the flu or pneumonia?
In the beginning, yep, in the very beginning, because of fever-like symptoms and achiness and a lot of different things. progressively got worse as time went on.
And he was in and out of there with his breathing issues up until probably about 6 months before the actual transplant.
He was very critical that day, and they didn't give him more than 24 hours to make it. And a heart came just in time, and we were there when they brought the heart in. It was the most amazing thing I'd ever experienced in my life. I actually seen him as they were taking him down to open him up for the heart transplant. I just got to the hospital.
I do remember I was in the middle school, which is the 7th and 8th grade here in Troy, which isn't far from our hospital. And I remember being in class one day and watching an Army helicopter land somewhere outside of our school building. The helicopter that I watched land and lift off was actually picking my brother Don up from St. Mary's Hospital and transporting him to Boston General because he was too sick to make the transport by ambulance.
What was the Army's involvement with the transplant?
Well, I think that they got involved in the sense that there was no problem getting him sent to the other hospital when he was very critical. I believe Aunt Dee did it, arranged it through Sam Stratton. She knew about it through my mom and dad, and she had a connection because I think she was in politics at that time, and she knew the Stratton family very well, and that's how it came to be. She wrote a letter, and she was a very big part of that happening because they couldn't do anything more from him in St. Mary's Hospital. I was there the night that they told us that with my dad, and it was a terrible night. We call him a miracle. I call him a miracle, and I know my mom called him a miracle because the day he got his heart was simply a miracle. The whole event, how it came to be.
One of the guys that he was camping with the National Guard actually was diagnosed with hepatitis, and they believe that that's what started Don on his illness, which progressively got worse as time went on because of mistreatment. And it took my Aunt Dee, actually, a lot of phone calls and calling in favors, and was able to get Stratton. Stratton actually was able to get the Army helicopter secured to come and pick him up. It took a lot of work for my Aunt Dee to make that happen. So luckily
wow, that's
she was,
incredible.
yeah. Let me tell you.
Didn't really give him much time, and I do remember him telling me that he didn't think he could ever have children, and he was really bummed about that because he wanted to have a family. Even though I don't believe he met your mom yet, but I believe that he was thinking in the future, and they were told him that he would be sterile and he would probably never be able to have children. And I remember having that discussion with him. You came in, Donnie. I think it's kind of awesome.
He was always into sports. He, in National Guard again, he always did his things there. He was a skier. He was a hunter. So nobody thought at that age it could be the heart.
He was into baseball and very active, never sick. Yeah, very full life.
His doctors actually came up from New York to train the doctors at Albany Medical Center on how to do transplants for the heart.
My mom always loved roses, and the doctor who performed the surgery's name was Dr. Rose. I do remember that, and I'll never forget his name.
What else did he like to do before he had the heart transplant?
He liked to drink, as most teenagers his age did. He would go with his friends to Florida. I believe they went to Cancun once, if I'm not mistaken. A few other places. And then they would always go to the Polish festivals with us so they could drink.
We were there probably in the hospital 20 hours straight with no sleep. Because once they got the heart in, he was open completely on a respirator, on life support. And the sooner that he would breathe on his own was a big thing, and we never left the hospital.
When he came back from the hospital after having had the surgery, he just seemed more down to earth towards us younger kids, I guess I would say.
Did a lot of people want to do research on him after he had got the heart transplant?
I do believe so, yes. A lot of people talked about it throughout our family, was more aware of it, talked about it a lot.